happens in the same way in our poetry writing, that the images come to us and the structure happens. But obviously we want to illustrate the poem because certain things can happen visually that can't happen verbally, and vice versa. And what happened in the course of figuring out how to illustrate this part of the scene is a great demonstration of this dynamic. And for me is another demonstration of why monastic training it matters so much. This kind of integration of image with text. The most beautiful manuscripts that we have from the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages obviously, are monastic, and they're thinking in this diagrammatic way about knowledge and spiritual truth. Zay is somehow able to tap into that with us, and it's magnificent.
I think this is the thing when people do illustrated books and then they give it to the illustrator afterwards. The illustrator is kind of operating like a hermit. You know, they're not really involved in the writing process. They're kind of out on the side in the wilderness doing their own thing, and then you green light the illustrations, yes or no. But this is completely different. We're singing every day together, and he's a part of the chorus. It's really mind-blowing how he can translate what we're doing and the storytelling, and suddenly there's this beautiful image. That's fantastic.
Zay is practiced with other writers, but he wants to make sure he's doing what we want. And so he'll show us something and say, is this what you said? And we're like, oh no, we didn't think that through. This needs more detail. And this series of sketches and drawings is an example of that process for us. And also how the symbolism is emerging from the interaction. We need the drawing, we need the meaning. Is this going to evoke it for us? Oh yes, I need that. Okay, so in this scene, this is his storyboard for Act I, the casino, the first major encounter with the characters after our little opening mystical situation, that we're now in the casino and there's a couple at a table placing bets on the horse races. And you can see in the storyboard the 7 pictures that are going to be part of the illustration, and he's just sketched them out so we can say, okay, are these the structures of the scenes that you need? And then we have this focus on the sketch of want to bet, the newlyweds, and the husband is thinking in one fashion, as it were, and the wife is thinking another. And the husband is thinking sort of, we said in statistics and equations, he's thinking mathematically. He's going to be study the race sheets and say exactly, make judgments on the basis of the numbers, right? Whereas she is, of course, going to come along and say, woo, 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 like the color of the jockey's silks, and this one's name suggests something to me. She's thinking very poetically, right? So the twinning is the arts, the mathematical arts and the poetic arts, the verbal arts. Ideally, they should work together, which, because this is a story, may or may not work. At this point, they're actually working together. So he's thinking mathematically and she's thinking verbally. Now Zay he's building the sketch up, and he's got the characters. We give him source material to say we want the characters to look basically like this. The source material for this was a picture of Elizabeth Taylor and her second husband. He's filling it in. They're becoming characters now, but we still don't know exactly how they're thinking. And then he's starting to put the colors in. And I remember when he showed this one to me, and he says he's got sort of mathematical equation-y thingies above his head, and she's got squiggles. And I'm like, no, that's not specific enough for my monastic sense of symbolism. We need to go in deeper here. Notes and squiggles are not going to be enough. We need him thinking particular equation and her thinking in some kind of very specific,
profound,
symbol,
cosmic way.
Yeah, profound cosmic way. And then the images have to refer to other parts of the symbol system in the story. And one of the things that we have is the system of the planets, because it's in the roof of a fountain that we put at the beginning of the story, which is the sort of ornamental fountain that they go into the casino, and it's like representing the world. I think we put the planets at the top just because it was like the sky, and then there's the earth, and sometimes the deep super duper symbolism stuff comes simply because we said, yeah, that's right, and then later we're like, no, that's really right, that's the exact right thing. Oh my gosh, that has like layers that we never actually intended, but clearly we did, but we didn't. The joy of the writing process is finding how these things come together. The mosaic is building itself. So the notes and squiggles, he's thinking in note, and I said no, he needs a specific equation, and she needs to be thinking something specifically astrological. And of course, therefore, we have the planetary configuration for March 18th, AD 816 from the manuscript in Leiden Universitäts Bibliothek manuscript Voss Latin Q79 folio 93V, drawn between AD 830 and 840. Showing, according to Bede in his De Temporis Rationibus, the anniversary of creation. Got all that? This is what's like living inside my head. Okay, so She needs to be thinking astrologically. I know this image from Christopher DeHamel's marvelous book on Meeting with Remarkable Manuscripts, where he's talking about this Carolingian manuscript, which is a copy of a late Roman manuscript, which is the constellations. But this image is drawn specifically in the 9th century to go with this planetary astrological book. It's redrawn later in the 17th century in the same book that we took the picture from to be in the top of the fountain, and is used by Grotius. But what's fascinating about it is like the planets are so precisely situated in a geocentric design with the zodiac that more recent scholars have figured out what date it's supposed to be. And according to Bede, in his calculation of the reason of time, it should be the configuration of the planets on the day of creation. So we said, absolutely, that has to be what she's thinking of when she's figuring out her astrological form. But we needed it to be a little bit more diagrammatic, and I found out there on the internet, because the internet has everything once you know how to search, a schema of it, and I drew it out for Zay saying these are the symbols, right? And he took that and rendered this image. This is the complete image of the couple. Nikki Hilton is the husband that we're modeling it. Now, class, I have shown this to students on campus, and if you are properly educated, you'll know what the man is thinking.
Oh, don't ask me.
Well, if she's thinking in terms of this planetary sigil that, according to Bede, would be the configuration of the planets in the zodiac on the day of creation, he, of course, thinking in mathematical terms, has to be thinking Kepler's third law of planetary motion. He's got the equation form that she's thinking, which is the movement of the planets, although she's still thinking in a Ptolemaic universe, how we're describing the meaning of these movements, right? And so he's thinking in Kepler's third law, and she's thinking in terms of this ancient symbolic reference, which should be scientifically pointing to the day of creation, which is symbolically meaningful because of time. Science versus mysticism. But mysticism is science, and science is mystical. Still, at this point, they're still in harmony, and the dichotomy is to try to show the tension, but also the joy. She's delighted that she's seen the sigil. Okay, so I then look at that sigil, and I'm going, this is our design now. It's like anticipates the entire scope of what we're trying to show in our story, which is, as we say now on our webpage, so creating archaism of the electric mosaic in time and design and music and beauty. So the sigil emerges.